certainly people want to have the good life now, instead of delayed gratification. Everybody wants everything now. It's more like an instant society. Whereas to look at things in the future and actually plan a way to get there. Because what I found too, which really helped me, I mean, I was a mess financially in my younger years. And unfortunately, I got hold of all this good information at the latter part of my life, not at the earlier part. But money has got its own set of rules.
You went from broke, grieving, and buried in debt to discovering the financial principles that separate the 5% from the 95%. It's Ross Wilkin, who's a co-author with Pat Mesiti in the book, The Freedom Blueprint. And Ross Wilkin says that most people are never taught how money really works, and that is why they stay stuck. We are here on Pat Mesiti's best-selling author podcast, where authors share the ideas, stories, and breakthroughs that create lasting impact and financial freedom. So, Mr. Ross Wilkin, how the heck are you today?
I'm great, thanks, Robert. Thank you for asking. And yourself?
Oh, I'm wonderful now that I'm about to talk to you and talk about this thing that makes the world go around, money, right? We always think that it's not good, that if it kind of encapsulates our entire lives, but we can't live without it. And it sure doesn't buy happiness, but if we can have it figured out, that is a lot less stress off our backs if we can just kind of pay the bills, live with abundance, and pursue our dreams and all those other things that money can enable us to do, as long as we have a guide like yourself to show us the path.
Yes, excellent. I discovered that it's not taught in schools, and majority of families don't talk about money. So, I was 15, came from a sheltered existence in a small country town, went to a big city, knew nothing about money, but all of a sudden, here at a tender age, I'm in charge of my own financial future. Really, what could go wrong?
Everything.
So, yeah, and it did. And it did. Yeah.
So what sort of things, like, hindsight is 20/20, so we can always look back and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't budget. I lived above my means. I fell into the usual traps. Do you think, now that you look back, are there any money hits or mistakes that you think you made that are too common these days?
Certainly. One of the things I did is I treated all my money problems in the short term. So I'd run short of money this week, so I'd put a Band-Aid over it, but I didn't really fix the problem. All I did is I kept prolonging the inevitable, I guess. So I guess one of the major things that I've learned is we need to look at things long term, not short term, as far as money issues go. Because if you actually fix a problem, it never comes up again.
Ooh,
if you treat it long term. Yeah.
It sounds like your health, right? If you say, well, I've got, say my arm's turning red and purple. If I just say, okay, well, I'll put a Band-Aid on it. Well, you need to dig deeper and fix the problem. So if the same money symptoms keep presenting themselves and we have not got to the root cause issue, then it will just keep on presenting until maybe someday we'll get tired of it and we'll go to solve the problem. But if we prolong it for too long, it'll be a big money problem to fix versus a smaller one. And I once read an article about a guy that he went like undercover at like used car dealerships, and they would like draw these like a 4 squares on a piece of paper, and they'd say like, hey, you're buying a car, it'll be this down payment, this interest rate. And all people cared about was the monthly payment. They didn't care about being completely screwed with a car loan. Oh, but if my monthly payment is so low, like the average person just looks at that small, as you say, the short-term factor, not the long-term. And so when you were young and dumb and making those money mistakes and living in the short term, like, what did that look like? What kind of poor decisions were you making?
Okay, well, that was one of them, looking at the monthly repayments, not the actual amount that it was costing me. And the other thing too was not really being able to differentiate between an asset and a liability. Because whenever I'd go for a loan to the bank, they want me to list my car and all sorts of stuff, furniture, whatever, in the assets column. All right. But what I learned is it's very simple. An asset brings money into your pocket, a liability takes money out. So a car, furniture, whatever, they're not assets. They're assets to the bank, because if you default in your payment, that's when they classify them as an asset when they sell them to pay out your loan. So what I found myself doing was, for example, cars. I'd buy a car, which is a liability which depreciates, and then I'd get finance on it and pay interest on it. So it was a double whammy.
Yeah.
You know, both working on the negative.
So if we can avoid it, don't go buy that double whammy of a car payment. And as I keep saying or keep thinking, it's so easy to look back on your youth and say, oh, I wish I'd, just bought a cheap car outright, or I wish I'd bought like a smaller house and had it paid off and moved my way up and been more long-term and strategic. But sometimes in the present moment, it seems like maybe our pride and our ego get the better of us, right? It's like if we looked at it logically and made these smarter money moves, then later in our lives, we could get an even bigger house, an even better car, because we avoided that eighth wonder of the world, compound interest, which is great if it works for us, but when it works for the bank, we're kind of like really getting messed over. So like, what do you think holds people back from making good money choices? Is it this pride and ego, or like, if the information's out there, why don't people take action?
That is an extremely good question. What I found was I didn't know where to look to get the right information. I'd go to a family barbecue, for example, and there's Uncle Bill giving me all this financial information. Because when I left school, I was ambitious. I wanted to get ahead. I wanted, live in a great house, drive a big car, have a great boat, all that sort of stuff. But I didn't know where to get the right information from. So what I did, I was involved in property, still am, but back then I was referred to as a monkey with a machine gun, right? If you can just imagine that, a monkey with two machine guns, having no direction, but just trying to grasp onto something to get ahead. So I think people too have, they don't really see the future. They see things more short term as to how their world revolves this month, this year, not 5 years, 10 years down the track, because both of those paths are totally different.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the major things with me is to realize that if I want the lifestyle I want to live, I've actually got to visualize it, plan it, and then find the pathway to go and get it.
Ooh, I like that. It's so important to use the power of your imagination to think about the future, because if you don't, if you're only present focused, then you'll ruin your future, right? You'll borrow and steal from your future, and then your future self will be saying, why was past me such a jerk? Why wasn't he helping me out so that way we could work together? And you're making me think that at one point I saw like this graph with two lines, and they said something like, if you're 20 years old and you just put away this amount of money versus if you wait until later in life and you put even more away, the two paths diverge so much. And it's like, whoa, if you just had some planning of the future decades, even though maybe it's counterintuitive, isn't it? You like run the math problem and you say, really, if I only put in $20 or $200 every month, and it becomes, $4 million instead of $500,000. And so it seems like there's many like mental leaps to be had as far as like, well, there's the way that money feels and the way that maybe our emotions tell us the future can be, versus if you run those cold hard numbers. And so so I'm curious about like what you think is the typical situation right now, right? People, maybe they're leasing that car, they're in debt, maybe they don't own property, but like, you tell me, what is the current money problems facing our people today?
Yeah, well, that's one of them. Certainly, people want to have the good life now instead of delayed gratification. You know, everybody wants everything now. It's more like an instant society. Whereas to look at things in the future and actually plan a way to get there. Because what I found too, which really helped me, I mean, I was a mess financially in my younger years. And unfortunately, I got hold of all this good information at the latter part of my life, not at the earlier part. But money has got its own set of rules. And what I found is when I left school and went out to the workforce, it was like trying to play a game of football or rugby or tennis and not knowing what the rules were. And if you play a game of sport not knowing what the rules are, you've got about 0% chance of winning.
Right.
And
especially if everyone else knows the rules and you're the only one who doesn't.
Correct. So that was one major thing, is to actually work out how money works. And that's, asset liability, 10% account, pay yourself first because you're the most important person. What I used to do is, what I was taught to do is be responsible, pay all my bills, and whatever's left over, save a bit of that for a rainy day. And, I was surprised how often it actually rained. And I'd have to, it was just like a hamster on a wheel, round and round and round. So I'm not sure if I answered your question there, but
well, it gets us on a good track of some more interesting questions, right? Because it's never fully answered, right? No one ever really has all their money, all their problems figured out. It's just a matter of like, what's the interesting next question? And I've heard about this 10% idea, or like there's another guy that has an idea called like profit first. And it's all like, I've heard about just this, set aside the 10%, but it hurts my brain thinking about it. So maybe you can help me, because I'm sure there are objections to it, right? If someone says, well, how do I set aside 10% if there's all these other unexpected emergencies? And I imagine that the answer is that, well, you need to have it all planned for, right? You need to say, well, all of your money has to go into certain buckets. But you tell me, if you say, well, you take home $7,000 a month and you have to put $700 for yourself and figure out the rest. If someone says, well, I can't figure that out, life's too unpredictable, I'm not good with numbers, 10 more excuses, what is the answer? How do we figure out this whole 10% equation?
Okay, once again, a very good question, but it is so important. If I get this a lot, people don't think they can afford to pay themselves first, right? But what it really is they don't have their finances in order. Basically, they live with it outside their means. And so when I started on this 10% track, which was good, the part I messed up on was that the difference between an asset and a liability, because your 10% account is for buying assets only, assets that bring more money into your pocket, not to take the dog to the vet if it gets ill, not to fix a car if it breaks down. So once again, it's a long-term thing. If people think they can't afford the 10%, basically they're short-term thinking. Everything needs to be long-term thinking, because if you solve problems long-term, short-term takes care of itself. But if you keep fixing short-term problems, they will go on for years and years, because what life does, life keeps serving up the same lessons until they're learnt.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things all interwoven, but it comes down to basically having a path to get, well, first of all, knowing where you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years, because 5 to 10 years is going to happen anyway.
True.
It just depends. And you mentioned the default path. I have a challenge with our education systems because they don't teach about money. So what we have is, you mentioned that 5% of the population can take care of themselves financially, the other 95% at retirement age. are either dead broke, still working, or reliant on government or family to look after them. So I started to ask questions. So tell me about these 5%. What makes them different to the rest of us? And what number one is they own a business. Right? They're not employees. So then that made me think about our education system, is that what we have as school teachers who are employees teaching our children how to become employees. Because nobody at school teaches people how to become wealthy.
Right.
Yeah. I tend to go off down rabbit holes, as you probably worked out.
But that's okay. Rabbit holes are good, right? It keeps things interesting, get us thinking, and I guess, when you think about that, there's nothing wrong on the surface, I guess, right? With employees teaching other employees. Some people just don't have ambitions in life, but we're hoping that if someone is listening to our podcast right now, they want more, right? They're not satisfied with just average. And so it's like, well, it is unfortunate that the schools don't teach finances. It seems almost anywhere, right? In Australia, in America, it's left out. It's this big gaping hole, and we're just expected to figure it out on our own. But those who do can say, okay, I know that there's something missing in my life. I have ambition, and I'm taking the risk anyway, right? Because if you're an employee, you could get fired, and there is that uncertainty anyways. So why not take a little bit of the control back and work maybe 10 or 20% harder and figure out more solutions to problems instead of problems for solutions, and say, okay, I'll grow my own business and I'll get this budgeting figured out. I'll sacrifice slightly now, that way I can have a better long term, and I'll seek some solutions. And so as far as what you did on turning things around, some people say that it's important to budget or figure out the debt snowball or the avalanche, or get real estate or property. Like, what do you think? Are there any important factors in your own journey when you turn things around financially for yourself?
Yes, absolutely. And probably the heading I could put that under is I actually found the source of the information that I needed. Because for a long time, for years and years, I was wandering around out there trying to find the path, trying to find the information that I needed to get me out of the 95% and into the 5%. And there's a saying that goes, is when the student is ready, the
teacher will appear.
Thank you. Yes. And that is exactly what happened. And once again, it's an attitude thing too. If you're looking for more out of life, as you said, some people aren't, and that's fine. But for the people who want more out of life and are frustrated with how on earth do I do this, where do I go, a gentleman by the name of Peter came into my life, and very different, very quietly spoken, very laid back, but he had the rungs on the board, and he was prepared to share information with me to help me, which in return helped him. And that's where it all started. That's where it all started to gel. That's where the old thinking started to get replaced with actual good thinking, with wealth thinking, long-term thinking. So that was a major, major, major turning point in my life. Well, that's where it all did a big turn. Absolutely. Because without that, I would have been on the default trail, like 95% of people working all their lives with a 95% chance of ending up broke. I mean, when I heard that, I thought, why?
Yes, that woke you up. And they call that the hero's journey, don't they? That, like in Star Wars, right? Luke Skywalker is living an average life that we can all relate to. And here comes Obi-Wan Kenobi and shows him a new way and wakes him up. And you think about so much how you are the company you keep. As you say, if you go to that barbecue and Uncle Fred is just bragging about all this money, tips, and advice, and that's just leaving it up to random chance, right? The family that you're born into, and those people in your friend circle at a young age, that's a roll of the dice. Versus if you say, well, hey, I'll take this money thing seriously and I'll choose who I listen to. I'll base who my mentors are on logic and someone who seems to have this figured out, not just who happens to come into my orbit or over here at the barbecue. And so it seems like there's a lot to be figured out money wise. But from our conversation here, it seems like quite a bit is mindset and not avoiding the money problem and finding a way to enjoy solution seeking and figuring out the numbers. That way money can be an upward trend for us and not just falling deep into debt. And we want to send people over to your website in a moment, which is wilkinandassociates.com. But before we do, I want to make sure that we cover the bases, Mr. Ross. So do you think in this conversation we're having, could there be a missing question that I should be asking you, I just don't know to ask you?
I think the major question, I'll answer that in a moment. If I can just say something first.
Sure.
I think I've experienced this. One of the I think the bad things that parents do for their children is they ask them the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a lawyer? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? Now, to me, that is totally the wrong question. The right question should be, how do you want to live your life? Because how much does a doctor earn? What lifestyle does a doctor earn? What lifestyle does a lawyer have? So I think the most important question is how do you want to live your life? Because no one is coming to save you. No one is going to come and help you. It's up to you. The person you see in the mirror every morning is the one that's going to save you, the one that's going to help you. So I think that is a very pertinent question. How do you want to live your life?
That's great. That's looking at the bigger picture and not just the narrow lens of your profession, and especially the way that the world evolves and the economy and AI. I mean, you think, well, that job that you aspire to might not even exist in later years, right? If your dream is to be a truck driver and then one day the robots are all driving trucks, well, then maybe it's more important to think about what lifestyle and what kind of path that you want to be on, especially as it comes to being intentional about this money situation and personal economy that you're building. And so it's great to have this education. And I'm very proud of you, Mr. Ross, for how you've transformed and overcome divorce, debt, raising children, losing your father young, all of these things that just life just throws at you, right? And you can either give up or you can rise to the occasion and say, hey, I'll be an even better, stronger person in response to what life gives me. And so if someone is similarly impressed and inspired by what's possible with their money story, how can you help someone further into the future? What kind of person should be approaching you and for what, and what website should they go to?
Okay. Go to my website, which you mentioned before, wilkinandassociates.com. What I have on there is some other information which Peter shared with me on how to basically break out of the system where we are and start moving towards what we want out of life, the lifestyle that we want to live. So I would suggest that'll be first port of call. And from there, you can contact me and then we can chat further.
Very good. Very nice. And so if you're someone that is looking for more financial flexibility and better opportunities and to think things through and not leave money to a random chance and live a life of abundance instead of scarcity, then your next step should be to go to wilkinandassociates.com and start this conversation with Ross Wilkin to just get your money figured out, because as we've been saying, this is not taught in schools. It does not come naturally to many of us. So it's a skill like any other that we need to get figured out because our future depends on it. Our family depends on it. So we really need to take this seriously and get some of that extra financial help as far as the planning and the strategizing and making better money decisions than we might just in the spur of the moment based on emotions to think things through a heck of a lot better with the help of Ross Wilkin at Wilkin and Associates, who is also a co-author with Mr. Pat Mesiti in the book, The Freedom Blueprint. You can find that on Amazon at freedomblueprintbook.com. But what we really want you to go right now is wilkinandassociates.com. And before I let you go, Mr. Ross, it's time for the scary part of the podcast where I try to stump you. I try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun or interesting quote or lesson that has served you. So what comes to mind as far as a fun or interesting quote or lesson?
Oh dear, there are many. I think probably what's just flashed through my mind now is not so much of a funny story, but it's actually when I realised what I was worth. Because when I was in debt, struggling, going through divorce, my self-esteem, my self-worth wasn't real good. So hence my decisions were not directed for me personally at first. So yeah, that's not a funny one, but I think it's an important one. Just everybody out there needs to realize that, you're valuable, you deserve more, and there's more out there for you.
Those are good words of advice. That's good to consider. And I'm sure that the answer might not be immediate or easy if we say, well, I'm in such the depths of despair, but I love that you're getting that on our radar to figure out, well, what's my worth? How do I realize it? How do I increase it? What steps can I take to boost the self-esteem and to become a better person of value and change that family tree, to grow that generational wealth? And so it's time to realize your self-worth and increase it and believe in yourself and be happy and enjoy life and others. And the very next step to do that is go to wilkinandassociates.com. That's WILKINAND associates.com. You go there, click around, get educated, and most importantly, book that meeting with Mr. Ross Wilkin, proud husband of Julie, who has a background from banking, finance, retail management, real estate, property development, and he's here to get you to stop settling and to get your money right and get your money figured out. So thanks for being here, Mr. Ross Wilkin, and educating us about what that 95% need to escape so they can build the real financial freedom. I'm really proud of you and happy that you came here to help us talk about this financial education. So thanks for doing it. And thanks for being you, Mr. Ross.
It's a pleasure, Robert. Thank you for having me on.
Super great.